The EU versus Disinfo project has extensively addressed and debunked Russia's information since its creation in 2015. What has changed in Russia's activity in the information domain since the invasion of Ukraine in February 24, 2022? And how did EU versus Disinfo adapt to address this new context?
I think it's important to start with is that actually Russia invaded Ukraine already before, and this war has been ongoing for some time. And in February last year, it was a full-scale invasion, but we actually have seen this invasion happening before, and we've seen how Russia has been using information space in order to peddle its narratives against Ukraine. EU versus Disinfo is collecting these kind of narratives, and we have over 15,000 cases that are publicly available on our website. Almost 40% of them are about Ukraine. So this is a long-standing tactics of Russia to using information and information operations against Ukraine, calling it, for example, a puppet state. Calling Ukrainian, especially Ukrainian armed forces as Nazis, suggesting that Ukraine is committing genocide against Russian population. This was also one of the reasons why Russia officially has started conducting this so-called special military operation, as it calls its invasion of Ukraine. But as you said, there are several things that have changed since February last year. So first of all, we've seen this very hardening of the narratives. And I'm not only talking about the narratives that are being peddled on the Russian public state TV, so on the news channels, but I'm also talking about calling an incentive to hate campaigns, or even to committing crimes on entertainment programs. So there is like this overall presence of hate and of disinformation in all spheres of Russian society, which is very worrying. In terms of the scale of this influence operations, it's also important to understand that it's not only that influence operations are being targeting the populations in the so-called collective West, as Russia is calling us living in the European Union, but it's also very much directed towards other parts of the world, for example, towards Africa or towards Asia, Southeast Asia, South Asia, Latin America, because it's very much connected with Russia's interest in order to gain political support for its actions in Ukraine. And what is happening as well is that these narratives are very much targeted, and they are using very different topics that are permeating through, for example, African society. So they would be using topics such as, weaponizing, for example, hunger, or weaponizing elements connected with Pan-Africanism, or an entire topic about colonialism, which is funny when you think about Russia's actions in Ukraine. It's actually very colonial, but instead of that, they're really saying that this is, Europe is this colonial power. And because of the history, these topics are unfortunately very much resonating with the audiences. So this is what's happening. But also, I think what is really important to understand that there are new techniques, because we're not only talking about this narrative, so very textual analysis. We're also talking about a lot of different techniques that Russia, as one of the threat actors, have been using. For example, since the sanctions of RT and Sputnik, Russia started using mirroring websites, or started using extensively like an entire ecosystem of proxies and of different channels, using Telegram, and starting to using its diplomatic accounts. And this is very, very worrying trend that we have started observing, that there is no division anymore between Russian accounts on Twitter of its embassies all over the world, and the actual propagandist messages. It's basically used, these accounts are being used for information operations. Another very worrying trend that we have seen is that Russia is using very much this impersonification of trusted sources. So for example, you would have a fabricated video of Al Jazeera News or Euronews peddling some narratives against Ukrainians. You would have an entire covers copied in the style of certain magazines and posted on Telegram channels. And there are very, very various reasons for Russia to be doing it. One of them is that they are trying to get to new audiences, so audiences that would be trusting international media and would be surprised by seeing such a cover being posted somewhere on Telegram. And another reason for this is they're trying to undermine the trust in media, and this is unfortunately bearing some fruit, and the trust in media in general terms is declining very much. And if also the second part of your question was how do we react? The answer is a little bit more complex because it's not an easy. There is not an easy fix. There is no one silver bullet kind of solution, but we really need to have a 360 holistic solution to that. Definitely through EU versus Disinfo, we are translating our content into different languages, 14 currently, and a lot of our content is being translated into Russian in order to, reach, for example, Russian audiences who are living in Europe, for them to be able to see other perspective as well, and of what is happening. We're also collaborating with our international partners on, first of all, increasing our situational awareness and looking not only into the narratives, but also looking into the behavior aspects of Russia's actions and understanding better the influence operations. And finally, I think what is important to mention is that there is increased awareness and our work in resilience building. So we're working with the different governments in order to support them in their strategic communications. And we're training teachers, we're training journalists in order to be able to raise their awareness on the one hand, and on the other hand to also be able to resist these kind of narratives that are being peddled.
The battle to protect EU's information space has acquired global geopolitical contours. The first report by the European External Action Service on foreign information and manipulation threats mentions China's influence in this domain, while Vice President High Representative Joseph Borrell recently mentioned the deployment of experts in disinformation around EU delegations in the world. Does the European External Action Service foresee the creation of projects such as the EU versus Disinfo to address disinformation coming from other regions in the world?
This is our first report in which we are presenting our methodology, and we would like to invite our other partners to consult and also talk to us in order to create a community of experts who would be tackling information operations and to unify the methodology and unify the language that we're operating and the way we understand the threat. So if you ask me whether we would be investing in the new EU versus Disinfo outlets, I think the answer is no. But it doesn't mean that we will not respond to different threat actors and different influence operations. What I think is important to do is not to fund new outlets, but it's rather strengthening our capacities that we already have on the ground. And the first capacity is actually situational awareness, and through this report is exactly what we want to do. We want to strengthen the understanding of the foreign information manipulation and interference. We want to strengthen the capacities of the community as a whole to be able to understand it and respond to it more quickly and more effectively. So that's the first thing. Second thing is the resilience building, and when I'm talking about this element, I'm actually using the elements from the so-called FIMI, so Foreign Information Manipulation and Interference Toolbox. And this is a toolbox that European External Action Service is preparing to have this very holistic response to influence operations. So second element of this is resilience building, and we're doing it, as you rightly said, we'll be deploying more trainings for our staff working already in the EU delegations, but also in our CSDP missions and operations all across the globe where we are present. These trainings mean trainings in strategic communication, trainings in responses, but also sharing of best practices between the practitioners and experts. Another very important element is actually collaborating with our colleagues from the European Commission and diverting funding for civil society organizations and organizations that are who are practitioners and acting against disinformation in the continent of Africa, for example. So really looking for the local expertise, so not reinventing the wheel, but rather looking for the people who are already there, working on those topics and strengthening their capabilities and capacities.
We've witnessed a spectacular development in AI-related technology in the past months alone. Some analysts point to this inflection point in the next few years regarding AI content produced online, such as deepfakes, other visual media, voice generation, or text-based output. This entails new challenges regarding the speed and the scope of disinformation dissemination online. Does the EU have the right mechanisms to address this, and what future avenues do you see to tackle this issue?
So first of all, I think when we talk about AI, we need to understand that AI is actually a tool. And as a tool, it can be used in many different ways. So when I think about a tool, and I'm an avid gardener, so I think about a shovel, for example. A shovel can be used in order, to do some gardening and to plant my daffodils, my favorite flowers. But it also can be used to actually kill someone or even dig the grave. So it really depends on how are you going to use the tool. And we've seen excellent uses of AI, but on the other hand, of course, there are actors out there who are using it for information operations. For example, it enables, a very easy creation of content through voice generation in order to peddle some narratives through videos, and videos are very often used to spread disinformation narratives. On the other hand, without AI, it would be difficult for us to actually conduct our work because natural language processing, machine learning is actually enabling us, the community of fact checkers and scientists who are analyzing social media, who are analyzing trends of disinformation to tackle these. So it's really important to not be scared of AI. I think this is the first important thing. And by this I also mean that we should not be legislating it and not overthinking how we're going to approach it in the future. There is definitely still a lot to come. These are the tools that are still being developed on the one hand. On the other hand, I think it's very important for the EU to direct our interest into supporting innovation and not being scared of it, but actually supporting it in a way that will strengthen our societies, strengthen our democracies, and to really have these kind of conversations where we will draw the line, no, this is illegal activity, and we have decided as the European Union that these activities will not be allowed in our societies, and really punish the perpetrators and exert much more pressure on the companies who are using AI in those issues. So I think in the future we will really face this sort of a arms race, if you will, and it will be very much depending on us, and both on us as citizens, but also us as civil society, us as policymakers, on which part of the history we will be.
Thank you very much for being with us today here.